I'm
Good. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing great.
Where in the world are you?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm sorry we can't join you.
I missed it terribly. I'm gonna try and come back for next year. We're this close to being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember meeting you at Monster Fest a few years ago now, but it feels at home to have a Soska Sisters film at Monster Fest because it just feels right. How do you feel with your new film being at Monster Fest?
Jen and I are overjoyed. I was actually talking to Grant about it, and he reminded me that Monster Fest is the one and only film festival in the world that's played all of our movies: Dead Hooker, American Mary, See No Evil 2, ABCs of Death 2, Vendetta, Rabid, and now On the Edge. So I feel like I went back to summer camp, and for a weird horror girl, I'm actually the cool kid there, and I get to like hang out and reconnect with all my friends.
Yeah, with Monster Fest, we actually sent them the script before we even shot. Before we even started, we said, hey, we're doing something really different, but we think it's definitely a Monster Fest movie. And Ben over there, he's amazing. He read it and he's like, yeah, this is definitely a Monster Fest movie. And then he watched it and he's like, yeah, definitely a Monster Fest movie.
Yeah, and we were so relieved because we had our world premiere in the UK in London, and the next screening was supposed to be in South Africa, and the censors wouldn't let the movie play, and we're like, oh no, what does that mean for Monster Fest? And like, no, nothing at all. It's still uncut, it's still uncensored, and it's like fully unleashed.
Now, as you mentioned, this is very different to what you've done previously. Tell us a little bit about where the idea came about in the first place for this film.
Well, we are big fans of the film Hard Candy, and we were actually watching Hard Candy for maybe the millionth time. And with COVID, there's been a lot of restrictions, and we saw a lot of filmmakers we love, friends of ours, doing kind of dialed back productions and things that are super safe, small groups of people, and we thought, okay, well, what can we do in one location? And I really loved the idea of Hard Candy, but I didn't like the idea that Elliot Page might have been underage during it, so I was like, you know what would be really great? If it was a dominatrix, and what would be even greater is if the dominatrix just might be the devil.
It's funny because since American Mary 10 years ago, Jennifer and I haven't really done an original film. I mean, we wrote the script for all the movies that we've done, or at least had a hand in it, but it's been a long time since it was an idea completely our own. And I kind of partially blame David Cronenberg because we got so immersed in the Cronenberg world that I remember somebody saying, David, why do you always do these things against women? And he's like, well, they're my heterosexual fantasies. And I was like, ooh. And I was like, what would my sexual fantasies look like if I did a movie like that? And I remember showing my friends Crash being like, oh, I'm doing a David movie. Let's watch this. And I felt myself blushing while I was watching the movie. And I was like, okay, well, I'm 39. I'm about to be 40 with Jen. I think we're grown up enough to make a movie that's a little bit more taboo. And if we're doing something independent that's outside of like the big studio light, what would be something more risque that we could do? And we've been talking to Aramis Satorio, also known as Tommy Pistol, and about working together in a movie. And for some reason, we just everything came together and we're like, whoa, maybe this can actually work out this time, and it did.
Yeah, it might be because I'm a nice repressed Catholic girl, but I've always had a soft spot in my heart for sex workers. I think what they do is sex therapy. And as I got to meet people like Tommy Pistol, I realized how difficult their work is and how people treat them like they're less than human and not movie stars and not actors. And there's a lot of negative projection of sexual deviance, usually from someone's own, bad sexual experiences, but they're putting it on these actors who are absolutely innocent. So we really wanted to show the kink community and sex work in a different light.
Yeah, the last time we did that was with Body Modification in American Mary, so we were hoping that maybe people who after watch On the Edge, they'll be able to have the same experience where they're like, ooh, I saw myself in the movie, and I wasn't made out to be a bad guy finally this time.
I was going to ask about that because one of my very, very dear friends is a dominatrix, and she always hates the way that her profession is shown in television or film, and she always refers to how there was a dominatrix character for a while in CSI, and they made out that she was all nice, and then they made her a psychopath at the end, and She said they never ever seem to think that sex workers have emotions, that there's a reason why they're doing that job. How important was that for you to get across in this film?
It was extremely important, and that's kind of the reason why the casting was as it was. In Rabid, we wanted to have an adult film star in the film, just like David had Marilyn Chambers in the original Rabid, but we had such difficulty doing that. So we thought, well, hey, we're going to do a movie that goes into the kink world. What better way of saying, hey, I'm so down with it, than having Jen actually train with the dominatrix and become certified. So she isn't just a voyeur. Here's the director, writer, creator, producer taking on this role, being like, hey, I love what you do. I want to understand it more. Here's my portrayal of it. And then working with Aramis. Aramis has been working for kink.com since 2006, and he's the amount of scenes he's had and the kind of amazing insight he brings just on sexuality and consent and what BDSM actually looks like. It was just felt like a perfect storm of, hey, we're going to be able to control this, and we're going to be able to say these messages through these two amazing performers.
Yeah, I think too many shows, too many writers, and too many actors use sex work as a vehicle for themselves. I think that, there will be a stripper in a movie, and it'll be just because whatever actor or actress wants to have this sexiness about them. But it's not for any reason other than they just want to be gratuitous or exploit that career. I wanted very much to make Mistress Satana, although she's definitely a force to be reckoned with, she's very human, she's very feeling, and she takes her work very seriously, because I think it's like sex therapy is this deep way of almost ritualistic healing.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that went back to like old world, like pagan worship. And I think domination is probably one of the oldest occupations. It's even mentioned in ancient Samaria with Ishtar, which also appears in the film. So it was so important for us to have people come in and watch the film, and for it to not be what they expect. Except if you're a sex worker, if any so far the response from sex workers and dominatrixes and masters have been so positive, and that's the greatest. You didn't make us look like monsters, or you made us look like humans. That feedback is what I just live for.
Yeah, and it was really fun to watch the movie play in Fright Fest, because there's a few sex workers in the audience, and you could hear them reacting, because we put a few jokes in there for them, and they're like, I can't believe they did that. I'm like, yes, they like it.
Jen, going and getting that certification, what was that like, and what did you learn about the occupation that you didn't expect that you would learn?
Wow, that's such a good question. Well, I wanted to know what it was like to be a healer. Being a healer is important for me, and in a strange way, I find being a horror director and being a dominatrix very much on the same path. We kind of bring you into, or we help you revisit a trauma, or maybe even a trauma you don't even realize you've had yet, and we force you to be braver than you think that you can. And it's in a gentle way of not pushing you out, like not hurting you, but pushing you to a limit beyond what you thought was actually your limit, in more of an encouraging way. It's very, in a weird way, I was surprised how maternal it is.
Yeah.
I was surprised how non-sexual it is. Even if there's sexual components, it's amazing how actually unsexual it is.
Yeah.
And that surprised me, because, there's the connotation that it's this thing or that thing. I mean, some dominatrixes don't do anything. Some people just want to be tickled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they want to be like tied up. So everyone's kink is very, very different, and is very, it has to do with their anchoring bias. Whatever happened to you the first time, hopefully it was a good experience. But if it wasn't, there's ways that you can, take control of the situation again.
Yeah, it's like body modification. You revisit the situation in a different light, and now you're in control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I remember my friend saying to me once that people don't realize that every session is different. I think everybody expects that every session will be exactly the same, and they're not even with the same client.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the sky is the limit, and I think another misconception people have is that it's unplanned. It's like an escape room that someone just like grabs you and like puts you in a location, and it's kind of like ordering something on Wish or on eBay and then waiting a little while, and it arrives and it's exactly what you wanted. but it's been put together nicely.
Yeah, one of the things that I found the most surprising was how people don't really know about the aftercare aspect to it. And during COVID, there was a huge increase in people seeing sex workers for just the aftercare portion of a session where somebody would hold them, stroke the hair, tell them that everything was going to be okay, that nobody was disappointed in them, that they were doing a good job. And I remember seeing those reports and hearing those stories, and my heart was breaking. And then at the same time, I was like, man, I get it. I get it. People want to have that connection, and a lot of the time they're too afraid or too insecure. They don't want that rejection, and they want to make sure that they're going to get that experience. It's amazing. It's just talk so much about human nature and how we communicate now.
Also, I have way more respect for sex workers. I'm Hungarian. I try to make myself look nice all the time.
Yeah.
But to keep this level of excellence that Mistress Satana has, it's exhausting to be someone else's fantasy.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people forget about that. It's exhausting being somebody else's fantasy.
And when you're someone else's fantasy, you're not a real person.
No.
So, your feelings don't matter. It's incredibly draining. I don't know if your friend mentioned this, but it is, emotionally difficult to help somebody through these instances also. And it's not like you can show that it's getting to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tough.
no, definitely. Yeah, she's talked to me about that. And I know when she first got into the industry, she used to do 2 or 3 sessions a day, and now she can only do 1 session a day because she said it is so emotionally draining that some weeks she only does 2 or 3 sessions for the entire week because she said it just tires her out and she needs to recover from it herself.
It's true. It's so true. It's funny because the dominatrix I've talked to, after they have a session, they have to have some aftercare just to put themselves back together so they can be at that place to do that again.
Your friend sounds amazing. I really want to meet her.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, that would be great. I also wanted to ask, you said earlier that one of the goals behind this film was to make a film that you could film during the COVID period. What kind of restrictions were still in place when you made this film? Was there a lot of restrictions still there?
We were lucky. We just shot it a couple of months ago, and that was just right when the restrictions were lifting all over Canada. So we got up pretty easy, but at the same time, we were doing tests. We were being very careful.
Yeah, as soon as it was a little bit less worry, it was like, okay, let's go. We also stuck to ourselves. We became a micro community.
Yeah.
We limited our out travel, and we stayed all in the same place. Got tested every day.
And also, since we knew we were going to have to live in that situation, we decided we were going to have we made up an idea, so it was a closed set every day. So there was no, we wouldn't have been able to make the movie that we did if there's 15 extra people in there every day moving around. I remember watching Steven Soderbergh's Unsane and then hearing how Lars von Trier will have people set up everything and then send everyone away and just grab the camera and just do a scene with actors. And I was like, man, usually when Jen and I make movies, there's 100 people there. What if we did that again? What if we took this as instead of being oh no, we can't have a whole crew there, being oh wow, what a cool opportunity that we can do it dialed back and see how much of a control we can have. And it was nice too because Jennifer and I always try to find new filmmakers, new artists, and there was a lot of people who, this was their first big feature film. Our director of photography, Luna Wolf, editor, producer, this was her first big feature film like this. All of the cast that's supporting around Jen and Aramis, they're all comedians from Canada. I wanted to make sure that we had people that you wouldn't usually see in horror, and all of them are just the big stars themselves, and it was really cool to give people opportunities. And normally you can't do that in a big budget movie because you have to do this, that, and the other thing to appease this and that and this. It was just cool. You just found who fit and you just empowered them to do their job.
Yeah, no one got sick, just sleepy. We did a lot of nights.
There is a claustrophobic feel that goes through the film because it is in the one room and you can really, really feel that the characters are trapped. Because you were filming on one location, did that feeling come across behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera?
Oh, certainly for Aramis. I didn't realize, because for me, as Mistress Satana, at one point someone said this movie was scary, and I'm like, is it? Because for me, it isn't at all, but my poor beloved darling co-star Aramis, not only was he shooting in that room where I was torturing him, he was sleeping there. And I tried to say it was nice because he had those beautiful Clive Barker paintings over his bed, but those scared him as well, especially given what was happening every day. I'd torture him, and then he'd cry, and he'd really push himself, and then he'd go to sleep at that bed afterwards. For him, he was like, man, I just can't wait to get out of here.
It was like Evil Dead. Instead of a cabin, we were in this penthouse, and we'd eat all of our meals there. Like, it was a 14-day shoot, but 11 of those days were in that that one location.
And 7 of them were nights.
And and again, a lot of people who hadn't done movies before, so they didn't realize at night that means we're shooting overnights to get that effect. And things get squirrely, especially when you're shooting scary stuff. And I remember there's so many times people thought they saw something moving or heard voices or something. I mean, because of what happens in the middle part, and we shot that at 3 a.m, and I remember the entire cast and crew except you, got so scared and like heebie-jeebied from that. And I feel like if we hadn't done that, you wouldn't have the same effect over the room. Like, a lot of the different scenarios we set up, we knew we would have one location. So we're like, how do we utilize the front door? How do we utilize the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, the bathroom, the balcony?
I only feel like, because we worked so hard, only if we go by the location now do I feel sick to my stomach. Like, there is something animalistic in me that says, no, never go back there. Never.
Now, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly. So to finish off, I want to ask, what would you like to say to people who are about to watch the film now that Monster Fest is going right around Australia?
Oh,
not to interject, but we have about eight more minutes if you want.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
yeah.
what?
Okay. I thought I had to wrap it up. That's all right. Yeah, I've got plenty more questions, so that's fine.
Oh, thank you.
So following.
We'll save that one for the end.
Yeah.
Just edit my bit out.
Okay. So following on for what you said about Artemis with the room, how important was that aftercare for him as well? Because he went through a pretty emotional journey with this film when he was making it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Aramis is really lucky because he has his partner, Nicole McClure, and unfortunately, she wasn't able to be on set, but every day he would be on the phone with her. They would be coaching. He and her went through the scenes so much back in Los Angeles. He said he thought his neighbors thought he was going insane because he had to unlock a really vulnerable part of himself. Like, when he told us that this movie was the most uncomfortable thing he'd ever done, and he was like, of all the movies I've done, but I've never had to go there. I've never had to be so emotionally vulnerable and go back to dark places and really access those memories. So it's really cool that they were there together, and she was there to speak to him through everything. And then it sucks because shot, and then we shot all of the scenes that had happened after the penthouse. We had a few nice steak dinners. We talked about the process. I think we took like 3 dinners afterwards just to kind of have like a decompress too. And then I know when he went back, him and Nicole went back to it and just making sure he was fine. But I know it was a real drop. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the term sub drop, but we thought that might happen to Aramis because there's no way to fake the physicality of what he went through, and a lot of people who go through that experience afterwards, they have almost like
it's getting out of adrenaline. It's like a drop. It's like after you go on vacation and you come home and it just makes you feel low.
Yeah.
As a director and actor, there's 2 scenes. There's the one, if you've seen the film, Nose Against the Door. As soon as he comes in, that was the very first thing I shot with him, because I've never acted with Aramis. I've been a long-time viewer, and I actually don't know if he even knew that I could act until I did with him, and it definitely set the tone. But the second day was the aftercare scene, because I had a feeling maybe he would be really afraid of me afterwards, and he was a little bit. And then in the aftercare scene, I was really nice, and he's like, I don't know where Mr. Satan is going to land for me because yesterday was the most humiliating moment of my life. And I'm like, what, really? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Not from my angle. It was fun. It was like a strip poker game, but only you had to strip.
Oh, man.
But the aftercare scene was really like, it was really nice because it showed both extents of, like, both polar opposites of where he was going to go in it. And yeah, I asked him also about aftercare in his professional work. Aftercare doesn't even happen after. In adult, you can say, I'm having a bad moment. Everyone stops. They cuddle you or hold you if you want to be held.
Yeah.
They leave you alone if they don't. They'll call the entire shoot off. Like, the adult film industry is so friendly. If someone starts crying on a mainstream movie, that they say, you're wasting millions of dollars. Stop crying.
This afternoon's $40,000. Get out of your trailer.
You're gonna be late. Pull your shit together. So, I think there's a lot of misconceptions between the two of them. Aftercare, I think, is the most important thing, and I think that people like to go after and vilify things they don't understand. And some people have very vanilla sex, and that's cool. I love the flavor of vanilla.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't judge, not you, but the queen. They shouldn't pass judgment on people that are just trying to heal, because a lot of these people are either abuse survivors or something weird happened, and they're just trying to make sense of it in their life. And most of the time, they're not hurting anyone, not even themselves, even if it really looks like they are.
There had to be a level of trust between him and you, Jen. Do you think that helped that you two were friends? And did you talk about what was going to happen in each scene before you shot each scene?
Oh, yes, especially if I had a knife or a whip or any other kind of weapon. I let him know that as close as I was going to put it for camera. And I also let him know his safe word is red. So at any time, I never, ever, as a director, would I let any actor cut themselves. But yeah, he would not cut, but, cut. He was allowed to say red at any point. He never did. He was a very brave boy. And I think it's because we are friends, and that I'm really a sweet person. I'm such a sweet person that me as Mr. Satan is a little bit of a laugh. So I think he was okay that half the time when I was out of character, I was very nice again.
Us being really good friends also made the movie easier for me because there is a sex scene in that movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to talk about this? And I was so nervous talking to Aramis, and I was like, hey, Aramis, so we're going to shoot that scene. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know exactly how it's going to go. And I was like, oh, wait, because, and he's like, oh, no, don't worry, I got it. We go, bop, 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 5 more, bop, then I pop, and then we're good. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Because usually when you talk to your actors about nudity or a sex scene, it's a very delicate thing. And the more fantastical the scene, like Jennifer and Aramis scene, the more you're like, ooh. But he was such a go-getter. There were so many parts of the scene. He's like, oh, let's do it like this, or let's add that. And I think that's a cool thing because he's also a writer, director, producer, and we are all such good friends. So we're throwing in cool ideas like that.
It's just a literal metaphor. He's literally wrestling with his demons.
It's Catholic guilt. It's like
Catholic shame as well. Yeah, like when something bad happens, like God did that to punish you. No, how can you say something so horrible? That's so not God's business.
And if you have any desire, that makes you a bad monster.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that about religion and mythology that comes into this film. Was that there from the very start, or was that something that kind of developed as you went along with the script?
It's funny because it was always there from the very beginning. I think it's because Jennifer and we were the first altar servers for Western Canada for the Roman Catholic Church, and first female altar servers. And I remember at one point I wanted to talk to a priest, and I was like, I don't know if I believe all of this. And he said, good, always question your faith, and as long as you come back to it, that means you actually believe in it. And I was like, Whoa, that's so cool. And for making the movies that we do, I find Jennifer and I are never allowed to put in sex or anything to do with God. And we're like, it's too bad because dominatrixes are like these wise healing with like almost a religious experience. And we're like, and if you look at all these powerful women and all the old biblical text, it's almost like it's the same woman. And we thought, ooh, well, maybe there's something really cool there because we do like Bible study and we do have some interesting ideas, like maybe psychedelics were the forbidden fruit and the Garden of Eden, and maybe if we play that into a session, how fun would that kind of conversation be? Because you don't really expect it there.
Yeah, On the Edge is like a Bible study class you actually want to attend. As a young Catholic girl, I started to learn, like, as I grew, that there's different Christian religions, and then I learned, hey, how come this one's different from that one? And I heard that a king wanted to get divorced, so the religion started to split. And then I was like, wait, a human edited the Bible? But they already wrote it after Jesus died. And then, the more you look at it and the more you study world religions, there are things that are all come together. And when I heard that the story of Adam and Eve was present in ancient Samaria that far predated either of those religions, I started to think, like, what is this religious control? Because spirituality, it seems like it's much more interconnected. It seems like every religion kind of is a puzzle piece that goes together, but they have this weird, insane separation, and these confines make people do horrible things, and they do these horrible things because they say God says so, and God's not showing up saying so. So I really wanted to talk about religion. Religion loves to talk about sex. We thought sex needed to have its say on religion at long last.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, our 8 extra minutes are up. So to finish off, what would you like to say to everybody out there who is about to go and watch this film?
I would like to say thank you so much for watching On the Edge. This is a very adult, provocative movie from us. This is the first time I'll ever say it. It is not for everyone, but thank you for sitting through it because, like, if you get to the end, you're going to come out with something you probably didn't expect.
Yeah, it's like Jacob's Ladder meets Hard Candy with the Soska sisters' flair and very Silent Hill as well. Guys, gals, and non-binaries, if you drink, now is your time to have a drink, and please have a drink for us. We're with you in spirit.
And hopefully we'll be there next year with the next movie we're working on.
Yeah, and please hit us up online on social media. We control all of our own accounts, and we love to hear from you, especially if you're like, oh my God, what'd you make, girls? I'm like, thank you.
Thank you. Good day.